An Army National Guard officer who was called in to enforce a crackdown on peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square last month. So of course, Donald Trump can do his ridiculous photo op, will testify before a House panel to say that excessive force was in fact used against these protesters and that they did absolutely nothing to provoke the kind of force that was used against them. So the New York Times reports that Major Adam DeMarco, an Iraq war veteran who currently serves in the DC National Guard, intends to testify that the harsh actions were taken without provocation or adequate warning just before President Trump walked through the area with senior administration officials to stage a photo event in front of a historic church. So the New York Times was able to obtain the text of what he plans on saying when he testifies. I'm gonna read you a few portions of that because I think what he has to say here is so important. He says, from my observation, those demonstrators, our fellow American citizens, were engaged in the peaceful expression of their First Amendment rights, yet they were subjected to an unprovoked escalation and excessive use of force. So look, we all knew that, right, Ben? Like we all saw it happen in real time. It was horrifying. I remember feeling sick to my stomach and honestly being fearful that the situation would devolve into what we're seeing right now in Portland. But you have the naysayers, you have the right wing that constantly gaslights and pretends as though what we saw with our own two eyes didn't actually happen.
Yeah, I think that's an even better word for it. It's the gaslighting, man, that really gets me. It's the gaslighting and how disingenuous it is. Because if let's flip the scenario on its head, had Barack Obama or any Democrat done anything like this, we would probably be engaged in an all-out war at this point. Because there's no way conservatives would ever put up with this if it was done to them. But because it's done to someone who has a different political ideology, they gaslight us and say it wasn't what we literally saw with our eyes.
Yeah, and what's also really interesting about the scenario that you mentioned with Obama, what would happen if he carried this out? The reality is progressives would join conservatives in fighting back against it. That's really where the difference is between, look, I wanna say the two parties, but in reality, like I wanna believe that establishment Democrats would fight back against Obama. But I certainly do know without a doubt that progressives would be highly critical and would want to fight back. Progressives in media were critical of Obama and his use of signature strikes and drone strikes abroad. His cruelty and brutality towards civilians in Middle Eastern countries and the fact that his administration referred to them as collateral damage. Progressives were critical of that. But when it comes to the right wing, for lack of a better word, they really are tribal. Like they stick to their own no matter what, no matter what.
And no matter how far they have to go with their cognitive dissonance, no matter how much logic they have to suspend. I mean, forget about logic. Like there's nothing that they won't do to maintain their belief system. And no matter how ridiculous it is, they will go to the furthest extreme. So I really think we have to that needs to be baked into our analysis and our approach. And this is why the Democratic Party is so weak. They're weak because they continuously give the benefit of the doubt to Republicans when they've proven over and over again they don't deserve it.
Absolutely. And so, I want to remind everyone that the federal authorities used smoke, flash grenades, and tear gas against the peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park, and Lafayette Square, and even journalists were attacked by these individuals. So also members of the DC National Guard, a majority of whose personnel are people of color, have both publicly and privately lamented their role in the protest. So it isn't just one individual within the National Guard who's speaking out against this. The Guard's job on June 1st was actually not to clear protests, Major DeMarco will say, and that's according to the text, but to hold a static line, establishing a new security perimeter around the White House. But DeMarco was taken aback, according to his testimony, when the park police began issuing orders to protesters to evacuate the park 40 minutes before the city's curfew even began. And so, one other thing that he is planning on mentioning in his testimony is that the National Guard announced that people needed to clear the area, but they did so in a way that made it obvious that the protesters wouldn't hear what they're saying. And so the protesters know what the curfew is. They can't hear the announcement that they needed to clear the area. And that created a perfect scenario for members of the National Guard to treat these protesters the way they did.
I think one of the things that we may have missed in this is that this is how Donald Trump set it up from day one in Minneapolis when they arrested the CNN reporter. He showed that he had every intention of escalating situations, violating our rights, and bringing down the full force of the federal government if that state government wasn't willing to bring down the full force of the state government. He has been threatening it since day one. And I think it's time for us to start responding appropriately, especially with Democrats who have power. We control the House of Representatives. There are things that we can do about it.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't seen the response that we'd like, and there are severe consequences to that. And again, it's the dismantling of our constitutionally protected rights. And look, at this point, it's almost cliche to mention, but I can't help myself. Where are all those right-wing free speech activists right now? Where are they? They actually tend to be the same people who are apologists for what federal agents are doing to peaceful protesters right now. For them, free speech starts and stops with their ability to speak on college campuses without any criticism or protest. That's what free speech is to them. And look, to be fair, I think that people should be able to speak on college campuses, and I believe people should be able to protest them because that's also a constitutionally protected right. But I think free speech goes further, much further than that. And the right wing doesn't seem to think so, unless of course, it's their own that are being attacked by federal agents this way.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that clip of Richard Spencer on a podcast discussing free speech, all right? And the fact that they don't really believe in free speech, but they're willing to use free speech to gain power and then remove our right to free speech. And we see that playing out. While they'll dismiss him as a Nazi, which he is, we see that ethos playing out throughout the entirety of the Republican Party.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.